Have you ever wanted to summon Ishtar Inanna? The good news is you can. Just try chanting what's written here 108 times while meditating to her 8-pointed star. If that doesn't work, make sure to take it up with Evening Star Rose, a member of the Art Pagan community on Reddit, a community dedicated to worshiping ancient deities, one of them notably being Ishtar. Modern representations of Ishtar, the Mesopotamian goddess of war and sex, tend to be these disturbing AI-generated Oriental depictions of a Cleopatra-like figure. These images are enough to show that our modern conception of Ishtar is drastically different from what she represented in Mesopotamia as the patron goddess of the city of Uruk over 5,000 years ago. During those 5,000 years, Inanna Ishtar has taken on many forms as a deity who appears in more myths than any other Sumerian deity, and she has thus been referenced in a wide range of texts, religious or not. Her worship continued to flourish until its gradual decline between the 1st and 6th century CE in the wake of Christianity. Interestingly enough, though, she seems to be having a revival on the internet in the 21st century. Simply put, Inanna is the goddess of love and sexuality, but also of violence and warfare. So why, thousands of years later, are people on Reddit claiming that she, quote-unquote, loves dark chocolate, enjoys pretty flowers, and might even want you to have sex as an offering to her? In this video, I'm going to explore who Inanna actually was, how some modern people claim to be worshipping her, how accurate this is, and what this transformation says about the way we interact with ancient deities today. Firstly, let me introduce you to one of the most trusted and reliable sources on the internet, Reddit. Specifically r summer, a Reddit page dedicated to worshipping Inanna. Before looking at everything that's been said, it's important to think about the context of worshipping Inanna in our day and age, a practice also known as modern paganism, which is based on the revival and renewed worship of ancient religions. This, of course, comes with a wide range of problems, mainly linked to the extensive amount of available knowledge on the internet regarding certain gods/goddesses, which is all up for personal interpretation. In our case, there's even a term for this, which is known as the unverified personal gnosis, which refers to spiritual insights or beliefs gained through personal experience that cannot be substantiated by traditional texts. This tends to form the basis of the Reddit post regarding worshipping Inanna that we will see. The very first post regarding Inanna made 6 months ago asks, "Drawn to the worship of Inanna Ishtar, how can I do so correctly and respectfully?" Which is a pretty solid question to which members of the community gave us a step-by-step on how one could go about communicating/worshipping Inanna, which essentially involves making a shrine. As far as actual offerings go, one very serious user asks, "What about making love? I've heard this is part of her worship." I'm not joking, by the way. This question comes up a lot and typically gets flagged as NSFW. I would also like to draw your attention to number 8 and 9 here. One very educated answer to this question from the Discord mod in charge of this entire thread says what scholars debate on regarding sacred prostitution. There is no clear evidence that temples operated like modern brothels. This idea largely comes from later Greek and Roman writers who misunderstood, or rather intentionally distorted Mesopotamian practices. So when people online reduce Inanna to quotes like "she loves sex" and ignore her political, violent, and intellectual side, they're flattening a deeply complex goddess into a stereotype based on distorted accounts of her relationship with sex. The topic of sex in regards to Inanna seems to be the elephant in the room in each subreddit, with every user alluding to dedicating sex to her as an offering. In fact, many members of the community warn against fetishizing Inanna. But ultimately, most users say that it's up to you what you do or don't offer, indicating that each person has a personal dialogue with Inanna and can test the waters for what she does or doesn't accept. This is best described in this little interaction regarding whether dedicating sexual acts to Inanna is disrespectful or not, in which the user essentially decides that it's pretty much up to you. The undeniable sexual innuendo was the first thing I wanted to address, as it plays a central role in the question of why Inanna is being revived as a goddess today. As far as historic elements regarding Inanna go, there are mentions of her androgynous nature, which is a key trait of hers. When a user asked about whether it is okay to worship her as a gay man, the response he got was the following. Furthermore, there are many stories interpreting Inanna's association to gender fluidity as proximity to the trans community. As far as offerings go, the general template was presented as the following. Parts of this are grounded in real Mesopotamian practice, but the passage as a whole is not historically reliable as written. This is modern spiritual advice and not how temples in Mesopotamia function. It's essentially a modern reinterpretation built on fragments of real tradition, which characterizes this entire Reddit thread. This brings us to the vastly historically inaccurate portion of the video, which I will start off with the following comment in the thread, which literally says, "I don't know anything about Mesopotamian culture, and the truth is, you don't need it," which is essentially the whole problem. Amongst the things that this user then goes to suggest are that Inanna loves dark chocolate, which the Mesopotamian actually didn't have. Another member suggests that she loves lilies and her favorite numbers are 25 and 60. Throughout these threads, many different websites are referenced as supposed sources, the main one being the Gnostic Temple of Inanna. This website does include texts from the sacred marriage ceremony and other poems, which are mentioned as sources, although quite distorted and used for the user's purpose. They describe themselves as not being a half-baked, pseudo-pagan group for touchy-feely New Agers. This corpus of text is also mentioned, the ETCSL, which seems to be the most reliable source to date. The mentions of the sacred marriage ritual are, however, often used to show that she does, quote-unquote, enjoy sexual offerings without discussing the context or the purpose of the ritual, which has been said by scholars to be for the king to reaffirm his legitimacy on the throne. This is one such example of distortions of ancient texts for the purposes of modern worship, which does mainly center sex over any of Inanna's other domains, such as war/battle. In fact, there is no mention of any of Inanna's powers outside of the realm of sex, love, and vaguely marriage. This plays into Inanna's appeal to the neo-pagan community. She is an obscure, incredibly old goddess who is the topic of a great deal of debate even for scholars. Her associations to sex and androgynous figures are specifically appealing today, as these are relevant topics in today's political and cultural climate, making Inanna the perfect candidate for this sort of worshipping. All in all, this kind of personalization is very common in modern paganism, where deities are reshaped to fit individual emotional and psychological needs rather than historical reality. Ishtar becomes less of a political cosmic power and more of a kind of divine best friend, lover, life coach, and aesthetic inspiration board. In ancient times, Inanna was a goddess of contradiction: love and violence, creation, destruction, beauty, terror, sex, and war. On Reddit, she becomes something else entirely: a personal muse, a sensual protector, an aesthetic, a lifestyle. Her transformation says less about who she was and more about what people need today. So the real question isn't, is this how you're supposed to worship her? It's more so, what does it mean that 1,000 years later, we're still trying to reinvent her in our own image?